Good morning, folks. I hope you're awake. And it's I know it's bit bright and early for us, but yes, we are here today because we have author DwaiLahiri from Chicago. It's quite late there, so we had to be bright and early to come together. so people, if you don't know already, if you have not checked out our page, which I don't believe is possible, Dwai is the author of the book called Mahāsiddha Field that we have been talking about for a while now, and it has been engaging readers quite well. So welcome, Dwai, and please tell our audience about a bit about the person that you are.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hello, audience. um, so I'm a I'm a techie by profession. I work for a Silicon Valley software company, and then as you know, or you may not know, but I'm a writer too. So I'm an aspiring writer, more like it. My first book that released in December last year was the Mahāsiddha Field, and it's the first in a series of books that I'm planning to write. The genre of the book is sci-fi, fantasy, infused with Indian mythology and some spiritual elements in it. As a person, I live in suburbia in the Midwest of the U.S. and I have my wife, my daughter, and two dogs, and so we kind of merrily go along with our lives. Um, it's really cold in Chicago, by the way. It started
It's
warming
a
up a
windy
little bit, and
city,
then we
right?
got some snow.
It's the
Sorry,
windy city, right? Chicago is
it's
the
the
windy
windy
city.
and the frozen city. It's like sometimes we get temperatures colder than Antarctica. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, it's very hard to believe, but it gets really really cold here. So I'm
Okay.
ready for spring.
So, does the cold nights help you write, or
So yeah, it does. It does. For me, the writing process is a little like erratic. I can't sit down and write every night.
Mhm.
So I have to feel the inspiration. When I feel the inspiration, I'll sit down and I might write like several pages at a time. And
Okay.
sometimes, this will be like, I guess all writers go through that writer's block, right? So I'll sit and try to figure out what to write. And usually for me, I can't force it. So.
Okay. So, let's get into the little bit details about the book, The Mahāsiddha Field.
Mhm.
To start off with, tell us where did the idea or the plot come from, and how long have you been working on it?
Oh wow, yeah. So the Mahāsiddha Field basically started as a series of short stories that I
Okay.
published on my website. So I run a website called the Medha Journal,
Mhm.
and so it's basically it was meant to be sort of like this spiritual mythology based supernatural story. And then as I started writing it, I thought, okay, you know what, this it's got potential to become a novel. And then as I started writing, like halfway through the novel, I realized it's got potential to become a series. So
Mhm.
then, that's how it evolved. Um, in terms of the book, the story itself, so it's very heavily, India based. It's very heavily based on Indian mythology. And then I am personally, I'm a practitioner of a martial art called Tai Chi Chuan, which is
Mhm.
Chinese kung fu style. And so I wanted to infuse some of that because I love watching these wuxia movies, like
Okay.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So I thought I'll add some elements of that into it as well. So sort of, I guess it turns out to be a pot boiler in a way.
But the funny thing about the Mahasiddha field is that there are a number of protagonists.
Hmm.
You cannot just say that this guy is the hero who's going to save the world in a day.
Right, right.
So tell us about the different personalities that you have brought together and
Hmm.
how they come into sync.
Right. So yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. Because there's no like one single hero. So I think like typically when we read adventure stories, it's usually like the hero's journey, right? So the hero
Yes.
has a problem, he has to do something to overcome it, and then they overcome the problem and they return home. Um, but I sort of modeled it after the more traditional, I guess, the Eastern, way, which is not so much the hero's journey, but it's more about, um, you know, doing something. I'm trying to find the right words for it. So it's like, like a sage would go and disseminate his knowledge or his
Mm,
wisdom, or uh, to save. I shouldn't use the word souls, but to basically help people redeem themselves. So that
mm,
was the model that I sort of, started off with in this book.
mm,
And so when I started off with this old mendicant who's traveling through rural South India, and he is a devotee of Ma Chamundeshwari, the Divine Mother. And he gets called to go to this particular village for no reason at all. He just has this urge that he has to go to this old village where there's this old temple. And when he reaches there, he finds out that the villagers out there are being plagued by some sort of supernatural activity going on. And as a result thereof, they kind of take to him. They really like him. They think he's a very venerable old man, and he's a sadhu. So they say, "Can you help us?" And so he decides to investigate. And when he starts looking at the problem, he realizes that it's something a lot bigger than what he thought it was. Uh, and so this old man, he belongs to this ancient lineage of immortal sages whose job is to, one of the things they do is to make sure that mankind stays on the right track. So he has got a really powerful teacher who lives high up in the Himalayas, somewhere near, Tibet. Um, and he also feels like um, the ripples in the fabric of space and time, so to speak, as some major cataclysmic event seems to be coming towards, you know, the Earth, and humanity might be in danger. So he comes down from his high summit and decides to join in his student. And in the process, they get together this little, army of individuals from various different backgrounds, chosen for specific skills that they might have, or specific qualities that they might have. And so we have like two of the protagonists are, Indian American uh, guys who are like farthest removed from the little remote village in South India where the event is happening, the incident is happening. And then we have like two army jawans who also get embroiled into this because they feel attracted to, drawn to the guru of the old man who actually started the whole thing going. So together they get, they've band together, form this army of what I call the Mahāsiddha warriors, and
mm.
then they basically go about defending the earth.
Yeah, but then the thing is that when they come together, they are such different personalities. One is a
Hmm.
sage, one is a soldier. So
Right.
how do you make sure that they are in sync at all times, so that you know the things that need to get done gets done?
Right. So it seems like because the story is such, the way the story unfolds is there's a common cause because everybody sort of senses in a way uh, what needs to be done. There's something really bad happening, and they need to kind of forget about their own backgrounds for a brief period of time because they're kind of caught up in the moment. They're caught up in the process of trying to save the world. And then it also has something to do with like the mystical persuasive powers of the sadhus, right? The Mahāsiddha, the main the two main protagonists who I would call the gurus, right? And in our Indian tradition, powerful sadhus are really powerful, and I mean, you go in their presence and you basically you lose all your senses in a way, right? So you become sort of besotted by them, or maybe even like overawed by their presence. And these are like really really powerful people, so they are able to kind of transmit this spiritual signal to each of the protagonists and sort of mold them towards the direction that they need to go to, if that
So
makes sense.
that does. So talking about maintaining a sort of balance, there are so many elements in the book. The sci-fi element, the fantasy
Hmm.
element, the spiritual element. So how do you maintain a balance among all those elements while still keeping some sort of resemblance to our real life, so that you can engage the readers?
Right. So that's it's sort of like an organic process. I don't really, I cannot articulate and say, you know, I did X, Y, and Z in this formula to make it happen in a way. I think that the story does kind of has it does have a footing in reality, uh, because when we start off, the issue where we start is this little remote village in South India, and it's like really really how the villages in South India are, like totally back of the beyond, very rustic, very rural, not much of technology has gone there yet. Maybe today it's different, but I'm basing it off of my memories of India from like 30 35 years ago, right? So
Yeah,
um, so that sort of is already a kind of a grounding effect in a way, right? So
yeah.
you're in a very real place, and then the story sort of like leapfrogs into like the fantasy sci-fi world. um, and I cannot actually, if I think about it, I cannot think of it being any other way than it is today.
No, that's one of the things that I loved about this book, is the way you have maintained the balance in the elements. Because
Hmm.
end of the day, if I when I put down the book, I cannot say no, this has to be called fantasy or this has to be called sci-fi, because the other elements are not that important. But
Right.
all the elements are so important in the book, and they have been maintained in such a well balanced manner that it was amazing.
Well,
And
thank you very much.
yeah, there were
uh,
so many and the thing was that because there were so many elements, it also kind of engaged me more than more in the sense that, yeah, I wanted to find out about all of them. It was
I
not
see.
just
I see.
what this is, which way is this going. I just wanted to
Right.
know the
Right.
whole plot, how it's going to unfold.
Right.
So
Did you get a
now
sense that the plot was, changing, like unexpected twists and things like that? Did you? Uh,
I did not see one of the twists coming,
okay.
but that doesn't say much because I read too much, and at any given situation, my mind goes to three ways. So
Right.
I
Right.
usually guess all the twists. So no,
Right.
but yeah, it would be the for a reader, there are enough twists to keep them going to and so keep them surprised and on the
Right.
edge. Yeah. So now let's get down to the sad parts of the writing journey. The first draft, then the
Mm-hmm.
editing, the actually the hard work that goes into the book, uh,
Right.
the polished thing that we see, the all the hard work that actually goes into it. So
Right.
tell us about your
My
experience.
writing journey.
What was the most nerve-wracking part of it? Was which one did you find to be the most difficult?
So I think for me, the most nerve-wracking part was when we actually published it, and it was no longer just my little creation and stuff. The story that I shared with maybe like close circle of friends and family who were interested enough to read it, right? When I was waiting for the readers reaction, like normal readers, not people I know, not people who might be obligated to say, ah, oh, you know what, I loved it, but uh, when real readers read it and react to it, that's really, really gratifying. And that was a nerve-wracking part till I started seeing the reviews come.
Mhm.
Like I didn't know how people are going to react to it, because the the book is, I guess, I mean, I wrote it because that's the kind of book I like to read,
Mhm.
and I couldn't find any in the market which covered the topics that were of interest to me. So that essentially was probably the most nerve-wracking part. The writing part, obviously, yeah, it was. It took me 9 years to write the book. So I mean, I'm glad I persevered, because sometimes life just catches up and takes you places that you don't want to go, and then it's we, we shouldn't give up on our passion. So
Mhm.
writing it has been a passion of mine for a long time. So in terms of
I
the publishing, go
I
ahead.
am really glad that you stuck to it.
Okay, thank you so much. Uh,
Yeah. So the how has your publishing experience been? Because people
well, the
get
publishing experience has been really smooth, actually.
okay.
And like I have like authors channel to thank for, they kind of made it easy for me. Like when I finished the draft, my first draft, I was trying to figure out how am I going to go about doing any of this stuff. And
Mhm.
then when I spoke to, Aruna, a friend's auntie introduced me to Aruna.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
when I spoke to her, I was like, yeah, she seemed to be in charge, and she told me exactly what to expect. So the publishing process in India, like the author's channel is taking care of all the publishing, distribution, and so on and so forth. And then once the editing and the final product was ready, it was kind of a piece of cake to do it on Amazon, because that's the route I've gone. I'm self-publishing on Amazon in the rest of the world,
Mhm.
except in India, where the paperback is through Author's Channel, and then the
Okay.
Kindle version obviously is through Kindle Direct Publishing.
Okay. So let's talk about editing.
Hmm.
It's a step a lot of people would like to skip out on. Uh, why do you feel, now that you have seen it in action, how it helps and or does it help? Uh,
Oh my goodness, it
what do
it makes
your
a big difference. Makes a
yeah.
big difference. Yeah, like I wouldn't want people to read the first draft now. It's actually got transformed. It's like like a rough cut diamond getting polished into, like, if I can call my my work a diamond. I'm sort of taking a liberty there, a little bit of uh, literary liberty, but that's what it felt like to me. It's like, when you create something, yeah, it's very visceral. You feel it's very difficult for me to detach myself from my creation.
Mhm.
uh, so everything seems like, oh yeah, it's perfect, oh this is perfect, this sentence is perfect, that paragraph is perfect, and then the editor comes in, and because they've got distance from they're doing it as professionals. They look at it and say, oh, you know what, like they gave me some really good ideas, and which helped transform the text. And then I also had some friends who did the initial editing, like the proofreading and stuff like that,
Mhm.
before I even went to the editor. So they helped me kind of shape things up quite a bit too.
Yeah, because
So
essentially a book is your child, right? And you can hardly ever find any fault with them.
right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm a musician, so when I compose music, like I think the creative process has got this. It's almost like a drug in a way, because
Mhm.
you're intoxicated by the process,
Mhm.
So you don't see the flaws when
Mhm.
you're in the process. So it takes some time to step back, maybe like a few weeks or maybe a month even, to not even look at it, and then go back and take a look at it, and then suddenly you can look at it as an objective observer, as opposed to the creator.
Mhm. We'll take a moment because we have a few viewers with us. There's
Hmm.
Sriparna Lahiri, there's Pinaki Ghosh, and there's Ratna Datta. So, hi everybody, and Yeah. So Ratna wants you to know that she's watching.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah. So yes, we'll take a moment here, and those of you who are watching us live, if you have any questions for Dwight, please feel free to comment on the video, and we'll get it answered. Sriparna says hi. So, and for those of you who are watching this later on in the day, you can still leave a comment if you have any questions, and we'll make sure that Dwight gets back to you with the answer. Okay, there's Balakrishna Karkara. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Balakrishna. He says hi. So coming back to our discussion, do you
Mhm.
plan to continue writing
Oh
Mahāsiddha?
yes,
And
yes,
now
yes.
that I know that it's going to be a series for sure,
Right.
and at the least a trilogy.
That's correct. That's correct. At the least a trilogy. I'm working on the second book right now, so hopefully in by the end of this year I should have it ready. Um, so like without revealing too much, it I think it's going to a very interesting place because I see a whole bunch of you know uh, issues that are facing us as a people today, and I think I want to address some of that through the medium of the book, without being too preachy, right? Because books are for entertainment, like novels are for entertainment. But if we can get a little more, like somebody's point of view
Mhm.
towards how the problems that we are facing are affecting us and how we can resolve them in a very fictional manner, I guess. I kind of like to read that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, like, since we actually talked about this earlier today and yesterday even, so we know
Mhm,
that it's going to be a trilogy at the list. So, do you have
mhm.
a certain plot lined up for the third book as well?
So the third book is going to be so the my plan with the series has been like the first book when I started writing it. It was more about like a student's journey, like a
Mhm.
disciple's journey, as like when somebody becomes a spiritual practitioner, they're going to the teacher, they learn the practices, and they get the transmission of knowledge, and they're kind of processing that, but they're still in the shade of their teachers, or the presence of their teachers. So it things are smooth. In the second book, it's the exploration of the seeker himself or herself,
Mhm.
as opposed to being under the protection of the teacher. You go out into the world, and then suddenly all the stuff that you've learned, when you don't have somebody who is a master teaching you, showing you the way, you might get lost. So it's about trying find your own path. So that's more like the hero's journey. The second book is about that,
Mhm.
and then the third book is about reaching mastery and disseminating the knowledge to the next generation.
Okay,
So
the student becoming the master himself.
yes, yes.
Okay,
I,
that's
I, I
very.
don't know. Maybe I revealed too much. It's very hard to say.
Yeah, the reason why I'm holding back most of my questions here is that if I start asking, I know people will get most of the plot out of it.
Right.
So, but yeah, you didn't give any spoilers. It was interesting aspect of this that I'm going to look
Mhm.
forward to. And
Thank you.
so, other than this trilogy, do you have anything else in the works?
Yeah, actually, I do. I have a small, like a novella of sorts of short stories.
Mhm.
Um, some of them I'd written over like the past 20 years.
Okay.
And then there's a new one I wrote for specifically for the novella, which will be coming out maybe in a couple of months.
Okay.
And so that one
Is
is
there
going to
a
be
theme?
purely
Is
the
there a
theme
theme?
is I guess it's like a spiritual, metaphysical theme, but also a supernatural element to it. So it's sort of like the first part of the Mahāsiddha field,
Mhm.
it's kind of based off of that model in a way. That's because that's one that's very near and dear to me. Like I like the metaphysical, the occult, and the supernatural stuff. So, you know, uh,
Okay. So, Sri Parna wants to know, can you explain which character impressed you and why?
all of them.
They're all your
uh,
children, right?
yeah, they're all my children. Well, I mean, some of them might not be my children. Uh, they're old. They're older than me. Uh, so no, I think that the character that I find the most impressive, and I was actually surprised at the way he turned out to be, is uh, um, the main sage, Vishwabandhu, who's the one who was in the Himalayas, and he comes. He's a really powerful man, but at the same time, he's full of compassion. And uh, I sort of modeled him after my own teacher. So,
Okay. Okay, that must have been some inspiring teacher to have during.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
most
that's
most
nice.
inspiring. Yes,
Okay, so and then Balakrishna comments that nice to see you, Dwai. Congrats for your achievement.
thank you, Bala.
Okay, so do you have any advices for the people who are planning to take the leap?
I think the main thing is to write. Uh, like, don't get disheartened with whatever situation seems to be a hurdle. Even writer's block, like I went through a writer's block like 2 3 times in the process. And because I wasn't like, I had so many things. Like when I started writing the book, my daughter was just born. So,
Okay.
so like being, a new parent has its own pressures. And but whatever be the case, people shouldn't stop writing. If you have a story in you, then it should come out, and it will be good. Just trust the process, trust yourself, and it'll come out. And then once the book is ready, then it's the next process is easy. Like I really think it's a lot easier, because once you have like a product, I shouldn't call it a product. When you have a piece of art that is ready for consumption, it can be polished and presented in a way better manner than what you feel as, maybe as a first time writer, it'll show up as.
Okay, is there anything else that you would like your readers to know about you or about the Mahasiddha field?
So that's a good question. So about me, so I'm going to continue writing. I hope all the readers who have read the book continue supporting me. And I've been sort of overwhelmed by the response I've got. Like for the most part, it's been very positive. All the reviews have been great, and people have come up to me and said they like the book. So I appreciate that a lot. And I think for us writers, especially, we need that feedback. And reviews are very important. So if anyone, whoever is watching it, if you have got the book, you read the book, please leave a review. Leave a review on Amazon. Leave a review on Goodreads.com.
Yeah, yes, it doesn't have to, and these reviews don't have to be theses. So you can
Right,
just write what you feel like. Keep it to a minimum of 50 words, and that's
right,
all.
right. Yeah, and like do the stars, hit the stars.
As
Uh,
many of them
uh,
as you can.
yes, yes, yeah, and be generous. Okay, so I noticed that some people say they really like the book, but they give 3 stars. I was like, okay, fine. If you really like the book, it should be 5 stars, right? But I'll take as many stars as you give me. Uh,
Okay.
in terms of the Mahāsiddha field itself, I think that um, like if I talk too much about the book, I'll be giving
Yeah,
it's got
I
some
know.
really interesting plot twists and things like that. All I would say is that if you like supernatural stuff, if you like thrillers, if you like sci-fi and fantasy, and you have interest in Indian mythology, I think that one area is actually not very well covered in literature, especially like modern literature. uh, I when I started writing it, there was no Amish Tripathi, or none of those people were writing at that time. So I'm happy there are people who are writing about this stuff now, and they're like greatly popular. But we need more people. We need the Indian mythology, the traditional itihasa and Puranas of India to be, more popularized. I think there's a tendency for us to kind of think that's old. It's old and it's old news, and we don't want to do anything with it. वो सब मतलब, they say this is all for the old people, the uncles and aunties and grandmas and grandpas. But that's who we are, as people, as Indians. We are who we are because of our, mythology. Some people don't like it being called mythology. They say, oh, you need to call it itihasas and Puranas. Yeah. So because that's what sort of gives us direction, and that's what gives us sort of like they're our compass in a way. That's how we grew up learning, reading, even like Amar Chitra Katha. Like I'm sure all of us, who grew up in like the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, grew up on a staple diet of Amar Chitra Katha. So, like, to bring that into a more modern context, I think is very important.
Okay, so I'll just plug in a little bit more. During our conversation that you mentioned that you're also a musician.
Yes.
So is there a place where people can go and find your compositions?
So I have like a YouTube channel where I have some music videos I've made, and then I have there's this website called SoundCloud. So
Yes.
SoundCloud, I have uploaded some of my music there, and so my I don't go by my real name there. I have like an artist name called Implicate Order. So
Okay.
if you go to SoundCloud, look for Implicate Order, and so you'll find my
And the
my
YouTube
music
channel
there.
is under your name?
YouTube channel is called Medha Rudra.
Acha, same as your this thing, similar to your
So
blog
my
website.
journal, Medha Journal, and then I used to have a pen name called Rudra,
Okay.
which is what I used to write columns for Sulekha.com, and in the early 2000s with. So that's like Rudra was my entry into the writing world. So Medha and Rudra, and then later I found out, quite by coincidence, that Medha Rudra was also a pseudonym used by Kalidasa.
Okay.
So the great, the poet
Yeah.
Kalidas actually used the alias Medha Rudra.
So this is where you found out, folks. Dwight does not only write books, but he also composes music, and he writes quite well. So I'm going to look up Implicate Order on SoundCloud today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, Dwight. It was lovely talking to you. And just before we say goodbyes, people, the link to the book Mahāsiddha Field is there in this post. Just go and buy the book and read it and leave a review.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Dwight, and we wish you all the best for the second book. Hope it comes out within 2020.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll try my best.
Okay.